Hello friends, I Anil Sajnani welcome you to my video lecture. The topic of this video lecture is memory hierarchy, RAM types and block diagram of RAM and ROM. This topic is taken from the chapter Memory Organization from the book Computer System Architecture by M. Morris Mano. The learning outcomes of this video lecture are the memory hierarchy in terms of cost, speed and capacity. We will discuss about computer organization, how the different memories talk to the CPU. We will talk about the main memory, that is RAM and ROM. Then we will talk about the operation modes of the memory ICs, static versus dynamic. We will also talk about the block diagram and function table of RAM and ROM ICs. So friends, we will talk about memory hierarchy first. Memory hierarchy is basically the sequence of memory in which it is used. We can have different types of memory. We can have primary memory, secondary memory and cache memory. Now depending upon its usage in terms of cost, speed and capacity, the hierarchy of the memory varies. For example, if we talk about the secondary memory, its cost is low, speed is low, but we can get it in high capacity. Similarly, if we talk about the primary memory, that is RAM, its cost is high, speed is high, but we cannot have a much capacity. So depending upon these three factors, cost, speed and capacity, we have the memory hierarchy. Now we can see here in the diagram how CPU is sharing information with the RAM. CPU shares information only with the RAM. That means in the computer only RAM can talk to the CPU. No other memory is allowed to talk directly to the CPU. But the RAM is approximately more than 10% slower than the CPU speed. So if we depend only on this kind of communication, that is RAM with the CPU, then the CPU is underutilized. It will not be fully utilized because of wastage of the time. So to avoid it, we have a different kind of memory, that is cache memory. The cache memory is almost as fast as CPU, so there is no delay, there is no wastage of time with the CPU. So the procedure is like this, that whenever CPU requires some information, that will be first checked in the cache memory. If it is available in the cache memory, that will be delivered directly to the CPU. And if the information is not available, then the main RAM is checked. The reason is that full information cannot be kept in cache, as the cache memory is very little as compared to RAM. If we have a RAM of 8 GB or 16 GB, the cache memory is hardly 1 MB or 2 MB. So that is why all the information cannot be kept in the cache. So whatever is needed by the CPU, that will be first checked in the cache memory. If not available in the cache, that is called a miss. Then in that case the information is checked in the main RAM. If it is not available in the main RAM, then the information is bring from the secondary storage to the RAM, and from RAM it goes to the CPU. Now we have auxiliary memory in the system. Since auxiliary memory cannot talk to CPU directly, we have an input output processor in between. So input output processor make a request to the auxiliary memory, that is secondary storage, which includes hard disk, magnetic disk and all, so that the data is read from the auxiliary memory and is sent to the RAM via input output processor. Once the information is received by the RAM, then it will be sent to the CPU as well as to the cache memory, so that cache memory is updated. If we talk about the main memory, in the main memory the information is stored as a collection of bits, not in the bits individually. This is because that the individual bits of the memory cannot be addressed because of a very large quantity of number of bits. So that is why the information is stored always in a group of bits, normally called the word. The collection of 8 bits is called 1 byte, whereas 2 bytes make a word. Words can be of 2 bytes, 4 bytes, or it can be more than 8 bytes depending upon the processor support. Number of bits in a word is called the word length. Normally this word length can be 16 bit, can be 32 bit or 64 bit or maybe higher, depending upon the support of the processor. Memory can be accessed by specifying its location address. Let us say we have a memory of 10 GB, so that means our processor should be able to generate the addresses of 10 GB locations. So each location can be accessed by the CPU using its address. Now the number of bits required for addressing the total memory, for example 10 GB, we can use the following concept, that is 2 power k is equal to n, where n is the total memory in words. That means if we have 10 GB of memory, so we will say 10 into 10 to the power 6, and k is the number of bits required for addressing the n words. So this is how we can calculate the number of bits required for addressing the total memory locations. Main memory can be of two types, RAM and ROM. RAM is random access memory, which is used for reading and writing both, whereas ROM is read-only memory, which is used for read-only purpose. If we talk about the operating of the RAM ICs, it can be done in two types, static versus dynamic. Now dynamic memory is made up of capacitors, and the concept used is charging of the capacitor. This type of memory requires continuous refresh because of the property of the capacitor, that even the capacitor has a voltage supplied, it has a tendency to discharge with the time. So that means whatever information is stored in the dynamic memory, even though there is a power, the tendency is to lose the information. For that purpose, dynamic memory requires continuous refreshing after a regular interval. That job is done by the CPU. Because of the refresh, the dynamic memory is slow. On the other hand, static memory is made up of flip-flops, and flip-flops can retain the information if there is a power for infinite time, so no refreshing is required. So static memory is very fast as compared to the dynamic memory. The problem is that the static memory, the fabrication area required is very high for the same capacity as compared to dynamic memory. If we talk about 8 GB memory, dynamic memory requires less fabrication space as compared to static memory because of capacitor versus flip-flop. Now the cost of fabrication of static memory is very high as compared to dynamic memory. So static memory is very costly as compared to dynamic memory. Next is read-only memory or ROM. It is a non-volatile type of memory and we can only read the contents from the ROM. So it is used for storing the programs. Those are normally permanently resident in the computer. It is used to store an initial program called a bootstrap loader. Basically, when we switch on the computer, the first instruction which is sent by the processor is to the ROM to load the bootstrap loader program. After the bootstrap loader finished, then the control is given to the operating system. Now we will see the block diagram of a RAM chip. The RAM and ROM chips, they both are available in variety of sizes. If we consider a RAM chip of capacity 128 by 8 bits, what it means actually. 128 by 8 bits shows that it can store 128 locations and each location is 8 bit wide. In order to access 128 locations of this RAM IC, we can use 7 bits for addressing. These 7 bits will be called as a address bus for this RAM IC. The width of each memory location in this case is 8 bits because the width of the RAM IC is 8 bit. Thus, this 8 bits is called as a data bus. So now, after seeing the capacity of the RAM IC, that is 128 by 8, we conclude two things, that it has a data bus of 8 bits and it requires address lines which is of 7 bits. Now this is the block diagram of a RAM IC where we can see various signals coming to the RAM IC and there is a 8-bit data bus. So now let us talk about each of these signal. The first signal is CS1, that is chip select 1, and the another one is chip select 2. These two signals, chip select 1 and chip select 2, are responsible for making this RAM IC to work. Now chip select 2 is inverted or complemented. So that means if chip select is 1 and chip select is 0, then only this RAM IC will be activated. For other values of chip select 1 and chip select 2, this RAM IC will not respond. Then the other signals are read and write. Once the chip select 1 and chip select 2 are 1 and 0 or valid, then if we have a read signal, the RAM IC will read data from the location and put the data onto the 8-bit data bus. If write signal is enabled, then in that case whatever address is mentioned on that address, this 8-bit data will be written into the RAM location. The address is represented here as AD7, which are the address lines. Now if we draw the function table from this block diagram of the RAM IC, we can see that if the CS1 and CS2 complement are 0 0, so that means the RAM IC will not work. It will go into a inhibit state, that is called a high impedance state, where whatever may be the value of read or write signal, normally called the don't care, the memory IC will not be accessed. Similarly, if CS1 is 0 and CS2 is 1, In that case also, whatever may be the value of read and write signals, that is don't care again, the memory will go into inhibit state, that is into high impedance state, where the RAM IC will not function. Similar to that, if CS1 is 1 and CS2 complement is 1, even in that case, that whatever be the value of read and write, the memory IC will go into a high impedance state. This IC will work as I explained if CS1 is 1 and CS2 is 0. Now we can see here that if CS1 is 1 and CS2 complement is 0, now the RAM IC is enabled. But if read and write both signals are 0, that means we are not interested in either reading or writing into the memory chip. So again, the RAM IC will be in a high impedance mode. When chip select 1 is 1 and chip select 2 complement is 0, again the chip is enabled. But now here, if write signal is 1, that means whatever is in the data bus, that will be written into the RAM IC, whatever address is shown by AD7 bits. If CS1 is 1 and CS2 complement is 0, again the chip is enabled. And now here, if read signal is 1, whatever may be the value of write signal, that is don't care, the memory will be in the read mode. That means whatever data is read from the memory, depending upon the address mentioned by AD7 bits, that will be outputted onto the data bus from the RAM. So this is a function table of RAM IC. Now let us see the block diagram of a ROM IC. The function of ROM IC is only to read the data whatever is stored in the ROM IC. Now in this case, if you see carefully, the data bit is unidirectional. The data bus is unidirectional because we can read only the data, whereas if you see carefully in the RAM IC, this data bus is bidirectional. Here you can see the data bus is bidirectional. That means the data can be entered into the chip or data can be read from the chip. The block diagram of the ROM chip again has two chip select signals, chip select 1 and chip select 2 complement. That means the chip will be selected or enabled if chip select is 1 and chip select 2 complement is 0. If CS1 is 1 and CS2 is 0, in that condition, whatever address is mentioned by these 7 bits AD0 to AD6, that address location will be read from the ROM and the data will be put onto the 8-bit data bus. So that means in the ROM IC we don't require any read or write signal. Only chip selection is sufficient to read the data from the ROM. That is what is shown by the function table of the ROM chip. So we can see here that if chip select 1 is 0, chip select 2 is 0, chip select 1 is 0, chip select 2 complement is 1, chip select 1 is 1, chip select 2 complement is 1. In all these three conditions which will not make this chip to work, the state of the data bus will be high impedance. That means this ROM IC is not selected. The ROM IC is selected only if the chip select 1 is 1 and chip select 2 complement is 0. During this state, the memory function is read and the data will be outputted onto the data bus. So this is all about RAM and ROM chips and their block diagram. Thanks for watching this video.